Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Goddess channel. My name is Fola and I'm super excited to have you for part 3, the final part of Brian Dennis's birth chart reading. So we're going to start off talking about some of Brian's assertive energy, his Aries energy, his Mars energy, because Aries is ruled by Mars, is in his 12th house, which seems to keep it hidden from the person themselves. Anybody who has Aries ruling their 12th house may find that their aggression, their inner assertion and self-assertion is kind of swallowed up, is kind of muddled. Instead of directing your fire and passion outwards, a lot of the times those people tend to direct their anger inward. 12th house is the house of the subconscious. It's the house of music and dance. It's the house of things that are hidden, repressed thoughts, things that we don't share with other people. So once again, these people may tend to only take their assertive, maybe slightly aggressive energy out on themselves. So not only does Brian have Aries in his 12th house, that Aries energy is swallowed up by his Pisces energy, which means Pisces actually rules his 12th house, but within that 12th house, it starts at Pisces, and then you have all of his Aries, and then you have a little bit of Taurus. And then, as you know, he's a Taurus rising. So there's where his ascendant starts. But that Aries energy, that Mars energy, Aries energy is about fighting for the self. It is about thriving. It is about passion and your calling, your inner fool, your inner emperor. It is your drive and self-assertion. And with that energy swallowed up in Pisces, it's going to produce some pretty interesting results. I can't wait for you to take a look. What calls you to action?
For certain things, I'm definitely much more critical of. I feel like I could be more actionable than I have been in the past. You hear a lot of like Twitter activism and shit like that, where it's like, you know about something that's happening, but you maybe post about it or you write about it a little bit, and then a week later, you don't give a fuck about it. You don't hear about it again. You don't think about it or read about it.
Listen, people would prefer it that way. People say they want you to give a fuck about it, but when I was ranting and bringing up the same things and being like, look, people are like, you're still talking about that? I'm like, yes!
Yeah.
And nothing has changed!
Exactly. And shit, at some point, that squeaky wheel, if it doesn't get any oil, it's gonna fucking fall off, fall apart, whatever the fuck.
Squeaky wheel.
Well, it needs the oil in it. It better get some fucking oil.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I took away from what you were talking about.
No, that's okay.
You were saying you felt like in the past you could be more active?
Yeah, and I guess it comes with, learning and becoming more knowledgeable about whatever it is that you're upset about. And injustice, sort of. Specifically referring to the show that you're talking about, he's still a person. He still counts. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the more important things that I try and keep with me, because it makes me upset that, not that everybody should have the exact same experience or exact same lifestyle.
No, but the world throws people away.
Yeah. And at least for a couple minutes, or like if they enter my orbit in whatever way, I don't want them to feel like they are unimportant, or like, that I didn't take the time to speak to them in a way that they were meant to be spoken about or to. If I'm supposed to give them some sort of information, like if I'm working with them or if I'm helping them out. Or if they're just a person on the street that, just chit-chatting for a second.
You like to give people the attention that you think that you deserve when people are talking to you.
Yeah.
It's like in your...
Because I feel like there's no reason not to. People sometimes say, like, I don't know you well enough to hate you yet. And I think that's sort of like a sort of a true expression where, like, you're right. Like, when you see somebody on the surface, or you just meet them for the first time, you don't know anything about them. You can't judge them or have some sort of sensibilities about them, because what do you know about them? I don't know their name. I don't know where they're from, what they've done, what they've been through. They're just a person that's existing. just like I am. And at some point, if you were to become friends with them or co-workers, and then you start to learn about them more, and you're like, okay, I can see how this person operates, or like how they treat other people, or what they're doing, then you can start to form and be like, okay, and then I know how I'm going to interact with this person in the future.
Okay.
Versus going into an experience with somebody, whether it's talking to them or whatnot, and just being like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to, talk to them
any kind of way.
Like if it's messed up or if it's like inappropriate, and kind of just, because some people just have that, mentality or bravado of just like, fuck it, it's on my mind. It's in front of me. I'm going to tell it to them. And if they accept it, great. If they don't, whatever. And sure, I guess, being that blunt is good, but then it's also not great in some aspects. There's good and bad to it all.
I completely understand.
So at least for myself, I try and make sure when I speak to somebody, they get the respect that they should have. And hopefully each of us gets whatever we need out of it if we're looking for anything to get out of it in the first place.
Your Chiron is a huge motivator within your life because it's squaring your ascendant and your Mars. It probably informs how you naturally show up. There's probably a wounding in how you show up. And then there's also a wounding in how you assert and fight for things. What gets you riled up, Brian? What gets you riled up? That's what I want to know.
What gets me riled up? Myself, and having this constant struggle of like, what the fuck am I doing with myself? Like doing all this shit, and like when you don't see maybe the results you want right away, and that shit, that's something where I beat myself up over it, like while I'm like laying in bed, or like if I get up in the morning, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing this for? That, and like sometimes that, like, that's
the week that I just had.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those things where like I don't drink coffee, but
I don't drink coffee either.
Yeah. It's one of those things that sometimes that shit just wakes me up. Like just the thoughts of like, what am I doing? Like, is this going to be worth it? Should I just, go fuck off today and do what something feels right? That just wakes me up in the morning. Sometimes. Exactly. Sometimes you need it.
But I'm also looking for outside of yourself.
If it's something that somebody else would do to rile me up, not knowing how to walk away or to leave a situation that is frustrating to them or that they don't enjoy. Like, I see a lot in my family, like, especially between my dad and my sister, where they will argue with each other and are just arguing with each other. Like, somebody said one thing that wrong to the other that they don't like, and then it just turns into an argument where that doesn't need to happen. Like, one of them can just go, like, because they're not going to spend more than the 15 seconds that they were in the kitchen together yelling at each other. And before this argument got started, they weren't going to spend more than 15 seconds together. But now they're spending the next 5 to 10 minutes yelling at each other, telling them whatever about each other. And, like, It's just simple enough that they could just be like, all right, this thing, annoyed me and pissed me off. I'm going to go either in my room or continue doing whatever, go about my day. And that shit riles me up because whether it's like my family or my friends or even just like, some strangers like arguing somewhere, like whether it's in like a restaurant or some shit where it's like, this is the shit that broke the camel's back for you. Like today, out of all things, like this little thing, this little comment, and it's just like, you can't just let that shit go. And then people argue like, oh no, it shouldn't let that shit go. I'm like, why shouldn't you? It's like, how much of an effect is this going to have in your life the next day? Like you might think about it 1 or 2 days after about how upset you got. But then after that, it has no other effect on what's going on with yourself. In that immediate moment, sure, great. You're upset that something went a little wrong, took a little long, somebody said the wrong thing. But not having that sort of let it kind of just wash away, just let it go by, I feel like that's something to me is very frustrating to see that will annoy the hell out of me, especially if it's like somebody that I'm close to and they're just letting it eat them up.
Well, because some people, they just actually need to get it out.
Okay.
That will help them. Mm-hmm. But I do understand what you're saying. You value the Taurus side of things that's like, I'm fed, got a home, got all the things that make me comfy, don't need you. It can lead to stuffing our feelings down if we all were like, well, I'm not going to have this argument with you because it's not worth it.
No, and I agree. And I feel like, with that sort of energy, it can happen. Like, things boil over. Sometimes you let shit go too much, and then you're right. You need to get it out and tell somebody, fuck you, or like, you got to do this thing, whatever it may be. But then there's a lot of times that I just think things are so...
People like to argue.
People either like to argue, or it's so, like, trivial that...
What's trivial mean to you?
Opinion. Like, a lot of opinion is sort of like trivial, where people will, for whatever reason of whatever opinion that they have, that it bothers them so much that they can't interact with them, or they just have a terrible time that they're here in the same space. And I get it to an extent. Like, there are things that are opinions that are more weighted, yes. Yeah. That I get then
into some serious ones where I'm like, oh no, this fucking matters.
Right.
But,
and some things matter more. In, like, for me, saying this certain shit that people get upset about matters more to them than it probably matters to me, which is understandable then. But then saying, like, why does that matter? And then there's a different opinion of why it matters. I feel like I have a much higher tolerance of kind of just letting shit slide, and a lot of, which is good and bad. It's good because sometimes you just, you keep on moving, you keep on chugging, and you keep doing what you got to do. But then sometimes, if it's repeated and that you keep letting the same shit slide, then it's stuffing your feelings down, and then eventually you feel some kind of way about it, you get resentful, or you don't say anything about it, shit starts to pop up.
Is that the only thing that bothers you? That's the only thing that you would go to bat for?
Here's one thing I hear from people a lot about me. Out of certain times after I know somebody for a little while, I was like, Brian, I want to see you get mad. And they will say that. And they'll say that often. I hear from a bunch of different people, especially when I meet new people. And like I said, I've known them for a little while. And a lot of the times, it's not worth the energy.
Yeah.
Like, it's to be that upset about something, especially when it's somebody else that is doing something that may be, like, irking me, or, like, may have hit me the wrong way. That is so much easier than, like I say, like, if it's me and I'm fucking something up and it's bothering me, that's the shit that gets me going, and I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing it like this? Why do I keep making the same mistake? Why do I keep having the same habit that I have? Why do I keep fucking, dressing the same way, or doing whatever's pissing me off? Like, exactly. Like, why do I keep doing the same fucking thing? That's what gets me more. If it's me, because I can control this.
Right.
This is all, I can control this. This is what I want to control. Other people, do whatever the fuck you want. Like, yeah, just like, be your own person so you can tell me about it, because I'm not living the same experience as you. That's what I like about it. I can't do everything. So people who are doing the stuff that I don't do or I can't do, they can tell me about it, and that's fun to listen to.
Okay. I remember you saying that you were working on, and when you joined your dance program, that you're working on not being hard on yourself, but also saying that you usually had a tendency to, if you're not doing something right the first time, you just don't do it.
I will become ultimately frustrated with myself to the point of, like, just getting irrationally angry with myself. And I've noticed that a lot, just like you said, through dance and whatnot, or even just like sometimes in life experiences as well, where I remember one time I was driving home from work one day, and it was near my house, and there was near a gas station, and this kid rear-ended me. And so, like, I pulled into the gas station, and I get out, and I walk to the person's car because he pulled in behind me, and it was this young kid, and he was, like, distraught. And I was like, yeah, and I was just like, because I looked at the back of my car, and there was, like, it felt worse than the way it looked. Like, I just, like...
That literally just happened to me yesterday.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, like, I got out and I was like, oh, this is bad. But I was like, damn, like, I, like, got thrown forward, and I was like, I almost, like, hit my steering wheel. I was like, that's crazy. And so I was like, the car held up all right. I go to the person's car, and it's this kid, and he's like super distraught. And he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know what happened. And like, my dad's like angry with me, and I'm just like, dude, it's okay. And like, I'm just making sure you're all right. And like, I think about that situation a lot because like, I hung out with him for like 5 minutes while he like calmed down and relaxed. And he's like, well, he's like, at the end of it, once he calmed down, he's like, well, you're very nice. I didn't expect this to go this way. And I think about that with myself, where I sometimes I just don't even want to deal with myself because I get so frustrated. Yeah, it's just like I rather find somewhere else to put my brain. Just be like, I don't want to think about myself and what I'm doing. I just got to turn it off somehow.
Interesting.
Versus giving myself, the kindness that maybe I showed that person, where it's just like, shit happens. You can try again tomorrow or later, whatever.
All right. So as you see, Brian's energy is very, very peaceful. His energy is very much so kind-hearted. And that has a lot to do with his aggressive energy, his aggressive Mars energy being swallowed up by docile, soft Pisces. But there are a lot of other things in Brian's chart that leads him towards being a humanitarian. He's got Virgo energy, which is about making everything better, just one little teeny tiny step at a time. He's got Scorpio energy, which is about getting to the hard things, not skipping over anything because it's too gnarly to deal with. He's got Aquarius energy, which is literally the humanitarian. A lot of the pieces in Brian's personal puzzle are knitted together ever so brilliantly. So let's talk more about his chart. Sun in Scorpio in the 6th house of healing, of daily habits, making things better. Virgo is the house of like the nurse. When your sun is in Scorpio, the Scorpio sun can see underneath the surface of what's going on. And then in the Virgo house, be able to help, have a drive to tend to people. And then you have that Aquarius Saturn in the 10th house that is about creating a new vision. And then you've got your Capricorn North Node in the 9th house that's about experiencing the world and understanding it, gaining knowledge and wisdom of other cultures. Just going deep within your education, because it doesn't have to be like formal education. It can be a PhD, but it can also just be like experiencing the world. And then you've got your Venus is in Virgo and your Jupiter is in Virgo. The Virgo archetype is the healer, that's the Chiron house. How can we little by little make this better? It all kind of makes this one big nice soup. There's so much in your chart that points to you being able to see through other people's experiences, through other people's worlds, and then put all of that together to inform people on what we can do to make this a better world. You're like, okay.
No, well, because I find that to be very true, where like I even said before, like I feel like I know a lot just by observing other people's experiences and having that, and then understanding that, we're not all perfect and we may find ourselves in a similar situation that we've observed or somebody else has gone through. And then at least for me, I usually recollect the memory of the feelings that these people were left with that as they were going through this situation. And so, depending on how somebody talked to somebody in a certain situation, how it made them feel, or like if the presence of somebody doing a certain thing at a certain moment, how that made them feel. And that sticks with me if I ever get in a similar situation, to maybe how I might go about this, to make sure that somebody doesn't feel some type of way that I would not like them to feel, because it wouldn't make this moment enjoyable or make this person feel welcome. That, for me, a lot of the time comes up. Memories of like how people will share their experiences with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your evolution is destined. Your Saturn is in Aquarius at 0 degrees. Remember I was talking about those degrees being important? Your Saturn is at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And it's also in your 10th house. So what that means is you're destined to be successful in your work, your career, but it is very delayed. Mm-hmm. Saturn will throw obstacles in your path to mature you, to get you ready for what you're meant to do. And Saturn in Aquarius in the 10th house is a builder of new worlds, building the vision that you see for the new world. I'm just going to read what I wrote.
Go for it.
So I wrote Saturn in Aquarius gains through connecting with people. And so that's an obstacle that I do believe that the next few years will push you to get over. I mean, not even get over, but like to really get over the hump of like asserting yourself, stepping into spaces and feeling confident, being in control of spaces. Saturn in Aquarius is about futuristic ideas. It's about following your own unique vision and implementing that in society. With your Saturn being at 0 degrees of Aquarius, you are meant to have a significant impact on society. You may feel as if your ideas are just out of the norm and they're just things that people don't really see or don't really vibe with. And so it may lead you to not assert them, because you're still an observer. You're observing, you're like, oh, people aren't really comfortable with this. I'll just keep it to myself. Oh, well, I mean, they're not ready for it. But over time, Saturn is going to push you, especially with it being in your 10th house, push you to be seen for your ideas, seen for your innovation, seen for the acceptance of individuality that you bring. That's what I'm going to say about that. While Brian's Aries energy being covered up in the 12th house does give him a tendency towards kindness and empathy and understanding towards other people, Aries energy is about the self. Aries energy is our drive, our determination, our excitement. It's how we show up authentically. With this energy not only being intercepted, but also anybody who has Aries energy ruling their 12th house or inside their 12th house, your tendency towards yourself can be muddled. 12th house energy is also escapism energy. You may run away from spending time by yourself or asking yourself the deep and hard questions. Your outlet of anger might be towards the self. Specifically, most of all, it tends to cover up our wants and desires. Now, not only does Brian have that energy in the 12th house, his Scorpio energy, which is also ruled by Mars, mostly is in the 7th house and is ruling the 7th house, which is the house of others. Any energies or planets that you have in the 7th house may manifest in your life as outside of you, what you look for in others, what you feel disconnected from personally. His Mars energy in his chart is completely covered up, disassociated from his personhood and who he is, leading him to be a generous spirit towards others. But it can lead him to be stingy with himself. It can lead him to escaping questions that dig too deep into the surface of who he is and what he wants, what he is here to accomplish. So let's get into that.
The whole idea of those concessions or the possibility of having to make them it's much easier to avoid it by just not doing it. Like getting into those situations in the first place. And I think it also, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but avoiding isn't learning how to make a boundary.
No, right, exactly.
But continue.
Yeah. Not going through something or not experiencing something, you're not going to gain anything from that. Yeah. And so it's this weird sort of because I've also mentioned before, I don't have the biggest drive of wanting to go, not just get married, but go get date people.
What led you to your previous relationships?
Chance. A lot of it's just straight up what? This person took a swing and I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Brian.
Yeah.
Chance?
Mm-hmm.
So you've never gone out of your way to initiate anything with anybody? That was a leading question. Have you ever gone out of your way to initiate any kind of interaction like that?
Not so much. Like, a lot of it I let fall in my lap.
What?
Yeah.
Lucky you, Brian.
Yeah. Like, it kind of, like, because that's, to me,
What the fuck?
the easiest way of going about it. It's like, once you find somebody that's like, hey, I'm interested in you, I'd be like, okay, let's see how this works.
So you've never told anybody that you're actually interested in them?
Have I ever told anybody that I was actually
Were you,
interested
I
in
mean,
them?
just in general, were you ever interested in somebody like that?
I've maybe had, like, an infatuation with somebody. Have I? No, a lot of the time it's just like, this person was talking to me and they were interested, and then they were like, do you want to, like, hang out and go do something else? And it kind of evolves.
So do you ever think that maybe that's why your relationships fizzle?
Maybe. But then that also kind of, to view it that way also is like, wow, I've never found a person that I find that interesting in the first place. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's sort of like a very depressing thought.
I don't want you to be depressed.
Well, that's the way it turns out, you know? Because, like, I've also had that idea as well, where it's like, if I just let it fall in my lap, then, right, like, is that maybe why I don't date people for a very long period of time, or, like, I lose interest after a while?
Because
but then
you
it's
were
also
never interested in the first place.
Well, but then that also means that I haven't found anybody that is interesting to me. Then I'm like, what do I find interesting? And it turns into
What do you find interesting, Brian?
Exactly. It's a whole bunch of questions of like, what do I give a shit about?
But maybe you need to do that. Maybe you do need to go into that. Like, and that may seem depressing, but like, I feel like that's important. It's like, because once again, you're just letting other people be like, I want to be in a relationship with you. Let's go, Brian.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. But at this point, granted, I shouldn't say this because we're always learning and growing. But it's like, if I don't know what I specifically find interesting enough in a person to be like, hey, let me learn more about you, let's go on a date, whatever it may be, then when the fuck am I going to figure it out? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it may come.
It may come, absolutely. It comes at different periods of time for people all the time. If that makes sense. I don't know if I just spoke English there. But I don't know if whatever I
don't know, I was thinking really hard.
I guess what I'm saying is that I have dated enough for me at least personally, to believe that I should know what I like, what I don't like, and then have some sort of base at least of like, these are the things that I find interesting and not interesting.
That's very self-critical. If you haven't done the thing of like putting yourself out there, then how would you like, you know, because that's where the stakes come in. It's like, who's interesting enough for you to put yourself out there? You know, like, and if you're like, well, I'm just not going to put myself out there. I'm just, you know, it is what it is. And I'm just going to let people come to me. It's like, you never have to like risk, you know, does that make sense? You never.
Yeah, but I guess it still comes back to, I don't find a person interesting enough to do that. Right? And like, that's the fucking terrible thought. It's just like, it circles back to that.
Oh no.
You know? Exactly, dude. You're having that realization. I've had that for like, since I was like 15, 16 years old. You have friends that are like, dude, this girl's beautiful. Like, I want to know this person. I want to like that. Like, you have friends that are like, engrossed in this person, and just, I haven't.
You've never had a crush?
You have crushes here and there, but like, most of the time.
What? No. Okay. Even if it's like when you were 13, when did you have a crush? Because that is an indication of something.
Kindergarten?
Oh my God, Lord. Kindergarten, before you knew sentences and math?
Yeah. I think it was like kindergarten. I also had crushes on like my teachers too. That was like another thing. That's like way out of reach. Yeah.
No. I mean, hey, that goes along with the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Hey.
Dude, I'm telling you, it might not be there.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
With Veronica, I loved her. And so with that, yeah. And so like that was a thing where I found somebody in a different situation that for me felt easy enough to get into, but it was still a challenging thing. It had its hurdles for me not being in a relationship like that before.
Okay.
And like there's definitely things that I learned about myself going through that.
Right.
But that didn't fizzle out in the way the other relationships
right, that's why I asked.
Out.
But how did it start?
It was at one of the improv retreats.
Okay.
And so we were in a group together. She came up to me and was like, hey, this is really funny because it's terrible. It's like absolutely, like on my end, it's terrible. She was like, hey, I find you really attractive. And the exact words I said to her were, yeah, I reciprocate that. And I was like, what? I was like, after I said that in my brain, I was like, this person's going to walk away from me. They did. Exactly. It's awful. Terrible. Who would say that to somebody? Yeah, I reciprocate.
Listen, it worked, right?
Apparently.
It worked. Okay, so but how did you get from that point to I don't know. You said you never felt the thing.
What do you mean the thing?
Like the thing that like makes you interested.
You asked me if it was I had enough interest in somebody to go
I did.
after a person.
Or
like
just
be like
to say something. To say something.
No, that I haven't. Most of the time, no, that I could remember.
What I'm hearing is that you will find somebody attractive or find something interesting, or even when we were talking about before is at a like not at a party, but like the way that you assert yourself in a group is not really doing that. Is like you'll be like, oh, that's cool. Let me move on about my life, stay in my energy, stay in my bubble without actually reaching out. That's what I got from this.
No, that sounds, yeah.
Which leads me back to asserting yourself. Because that is part of like, and not even just with like relationships, but it is a part of like the way that you show up in the world is like being able to speak up for the things that you want or the things that are in your heart. And so I feel like you keep it closed and safe and covered.
Yeah. No, I could see that. But I guess it's one of two things, I would say. It's either that I don't go after everything I want because I don't need to. That's
why
fine.
don't you go after the things that you want? Why do you feel like you don't need to? And not just in, once again, what we were talking about. In general, I feel like that is a blanket statement that could be applied. Why do you feel like you don't need to go after the things that you want?
Because they're things that I want, not necessarily things that I need.
Yeah, but part of feeling fulfilled is going after the things that you want.
True. But also, they are, at the end of the day, to me, wants, and wants are just things you would like
Frivolous?
To do. Sometimes they can be. I feel like sometimes the way people want for things, quite frankly, can be gross.
Okay. It can be, but also not going after the things that you want can also be stifling.
True. It can be stifling. It also kind of depends on how much I want that thing.
That's
the level
true.
Of want, you know?
The level of
because like if I think about it now, like what I'm doing, I've quit a job, you know, that was paying my bills and shit like that. To go after something that I want was a very high level of want.
Yes, a high level of want.
Versus, you know, maybe starting a new relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship. To me, that's
a low level
of want.
How hard was it for you to go after the high level of want?
Fucking difficult, dude. I was crying my fucking eyeballs out.
I know. And listen, well, I don't know that, but like, what I'm saying is that it's like practice makes perfect. When you start to implement those little things of assertion, then it makes the bigger things easier.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the whole spectrum of your assertion.
Okay.
I'm not just talking about 7th house. It's about the concessions. It's about like, it's everything wrapped up in a bow. Those small things are there. They're smaller hurdles so that the big hurdle doesn't break your leg when you try to jump over it. You know?
I guess I see what you're saying in terms of like maybe going after these small wants that you may have that like maybe I consider like frivolous or not worth going after would be something to do to gain experience or have an ability to be able to go after these big things that you want and have more confidence in this one. Right.
Yeah. And for it to be less hard for you to detach, because I'm just going to bring it back to like your sentimentality and always staying where you're comfortable. And that being, it opposes your north node, which is where you're meant to go, which is out of your comfort zone. I mean, it may become your new comfort zone, the fun of it all, the adventure of it all, but it's out of your comfort zone. There are little barriers that are in your chart that I find that you have shied away from tackling and are like, well, I'm just going to stay here. And I'm like, but these are the things these are the growing pains that you kind of need in order to get up the fucking mountain.
That makes sense. Because like the big wants were always hard and they might have been easier if I had enough interest in being like asking people out versus just letting it come to me.
It's not just asking people out. It is being able to say no and identifying what you want. It's like, it's all of those fucking things in one pie, you know? What do you want? How are you going to get what the fuck you want and not feel bad about asserting yourself for it? And that's in life. That's in life.
Yeah.
All right, these are questions you can sit on, Brian.
It's kind of just like, I don't know, because I feel like there's small parts where, to me, like asserting myself of like slowly going after, like, say, like an acting career like I am currently. Me asserting myself is staying after work in New York City and like auditioning for stuff, taking classes and doing that and building up that confidence to eventually be like, hey, I want to try and make this a career. I'm going to quit my job, go to school, get more experience doing this sort of thing.
Okay.
And see what happens. Like, and that happened. That's what kind of went on there. You know? But I guess there might be more to assert myself with, but then there's also just a lot that I don't feel I need to.
Like, when are you going to take your first trip that's not out to go to see your friends? That's what I want to know, because like that requires you to pick a place.
Yeah, that's a good question.
To say, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do.
So there's a movie that I don't know if you ever heard. It's called Columbus. So Columbus is essentially this movie about these two people. They're in different walks of life. One person lives in Columbus, Ohio. One's just visiting for their father was sick, and they're in this town. And this person's like a pretty significant person in the architecture world. And the thing about Columbus, Ohio, apparently it's like a modern architecture mecca where like it's in the middle of the nowhere Midwest, but they have these like beautiful buildings and these places like beautiful churches and like, you know,
interesting.
It's just, it's like, it's a place that the way this movie shot it and used these locations on top of the relationship dynamic between these two people and what they were going through was beautiful, marvelous. And like that was one place where for a long while I was like, I want to go to this place, and like I would go there planning going there by myself and just like you know, you take like a tour of like these buildings. There's like guided tours of them all the time. See what it's like in this building, why it was built, why the person built it in this way, and stuff like that. That would probably be my first one whenever I get the money to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Being able to talk in this fashion also has me being able to self-reflect and be like, right, like maybe I should take that little want that I might think is frivolous and be like, maybe it's not so frivolous. Maybe why don't I go after it?
Why don't you give it to yourself?
Right, exactly.
Like
the same thing about being gracious to myself and stop getting so frustrated with whatever I may be getting frustrated with.
Yes! Yeah! You deserve the things that you want.
Yeah, there's just a lot of unkindness that I show to myself, probably more so than kindness. Yeah. But that's definitely something that, you know, you go to therapy for, have tried to figure it out and be like, why do these thoughts go in my head? Why do I have them dictate my actions more so than like a more generous thought? You know?
I feel you. Scorpio energy is obsessive. I say the word obsessive just as a word. It's not a bad thing. It is just an energy. So it's obsessive about whatever it's doing, whatever it is in, the energy it's in. For me, my thought cycle, you're talking about people who let other people's opinions bother them. I do. And it's not really other people's opinions in general, but it's like something that I deem as harmful. If I deem this as harmful to others, then I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to let it go because it's important and it needs to be fixed and we need to talk about it. But like everybody else would be like, bro, we're not even on that type of time. Like you're doing too much. You're focused on the wrong thing. Like, why can't you just be happy? And I'm like, because people are dying.
Yeah. No, it's true.
But it's like how to take yourself out of that mindset. And I'm also very self-critical. And it's a Scorpio thing to compare yourself to others and to be sensitive about it. Being critical on yourself would make sense with your sun in Scorpio and it being in the 6th house of Virgo. That is very critical. And it's critical so that it can help, it can improve, it can make things better, but it leads one to be self-critical when your sun is there. That's how you move through the world, is to always have a need to better yourself, but then like not giving yourself the grace. All right, so we have talked about a lot, but guess what we haven't gotten to? Where Brian is meant to go next. So we're going to talk a little bit about his Capricorn North Node being in the 9th house of spirituality, wisdom, knowledge, higher learning, travel. Remember, the South Node is where you always have been and where you may have been in your past life. And the North Node is where you're meant to travel towards. It is the least developed part in your chart. Brian is meant to achieve wisdom. Your North Node being in the 9th house, it leads you to traveling. It leads you to picking up wisdom and giving that, doling it back out to others. Like I said, your Saturn is going to push you to be seen for doing that. And your Jupiter in Virgo is going to make you, it's like a vacuum. That's what I see right now, is a vacuum. Is you are born to soak up all of this wisdom and knowledge and then gather it and then hand it out, basically, to others. And it's for the new world. It's for the new vision or new version of what we're experiencing, because what we're in right now is not it. It's not sustainable, you know? And so there are plenty of people that are born to like help us progress. It's interesting, your Aries energy being swallowed up in your 12th house by Pisces. I know a couple of people who have this exact placement of like their Aries energy is in their Pisces energy, their energy, their drive to create, to assert themselves, to make space and make way for them and the things that they want comes out because it's swallowed in their Pisces. It comes out for the collective. They get fired up and they want to create things if they know that it is going to be beneficial for everybody. And it's harder for them to do that for themselves. All right, so we have gotten through a lot of Brian's chart. What we haven't gotten to is the next steps that he's going to be taking. There is a huge infusion of Aries energy at our doorsteps. It started with the last 2 new moons being in Aries. Then Jupiter is going to go into Aries. The North Node is going to go into Aries. Neptune, Saturn. There is so much Aries energy that is going to be firing up Brian's 12th house and forcing him to figure out exactly who he is and what he wants and how he's going to get it. It's time for Brian to make his mark on the world. So let's talk about that. The nodes will switch in July of this year, but they're going to be in your 12th house. They're already in your 12th house. So the nodes already got to your ascendant and they've been in your 12th house. They're going to be in your 12th house until June 23rd of 2025. And at that point in time, Saturn is also going to enter your 12th house March 9th of 2025, and it's going to be there until March 25th of 2029. Now, the nodes being in your Aries energy, the Aries energy that's kind of convoluted for you to be able to grasp. It's elusive because it doesn't show up in its natural form. Is pushing you towards your individuality, your not just individuality, but Aries is birthing energy. It's the creation energy. It's me. It's I want. They say that Aries is like little baby chicks. Like they come into this world screaming, demanding for their needs to be met. And they don't care if that means that a predator is going to hear them. They will get what they want and by any means necessary. And so because throughout this talk, that has been a main theme of what do you want? Where are you going? How do you get what you want? And there being a kind of passive energy about that. And these nodes going into your 12th house in the Aries energy, they're already in your 12th house. But when it switches into Aries, it will really activate that subconscious level of, I want this. And then Saturn coming into that 12th house in that Aries energy as well is going to refine it for you. It's going to push you towards understanding your spirituality, understanding your connectedness, your interconnectedness to others, as well as separating that, having that connection, but not using that connection to jumpstart you, but having your own fire, having your own jumpstart, but also having a place to settle. It's going to get rid of your self-sabotaging and limiting beliefs. Everybody has them. Everybody has them in some form or facet in their chart. But specifically when Saturn transits your 12th house, that is one of the things that it clears out. It's going to bring the gunk up so that it can clear it out for you and make way for energizing that Aries side of you that has wants, has desires, and isn't afraid to speak up to get them. It also, just in general, when Saturn's in your 12th house, it heals any illusions or delusions that we have about ourselves. It heals addiction. It allows us to become more comfortable and confident in ourselves. The 12th house is of the mind. It's of the unseen. It's of the ethereal. And so Saturn comes in and strengthens it, and it will, a lot of the time Saturn in your 12th house can make you sad or depressed, but it is to show you the depth of your feeling so that you can figure out a way to center yourself and be happy regardless of the moment. The journey that you have planned out for you is all divinely timed. It stuck out to me because Saturn is usually in a house for about 2.5 years. But because your house, your 12th house, is so large, it has 3 different signs in it, it's going to be in your 12th house for 4 years. And that cycle has already started. Has it? No, I'm sorry. The cycle of the nodes being in your 12th house has already started. But it's going to be in your 12th house for 4 years starting in 2025. But before that, the nodes will come and activate that 12th house to push you to find and understand more of what you crave, how to satisfy the self. That's the simplest way that I can say it, is that the nodes, especially when they switch into Aries, it's going to be in your, like the nodes will switch into Aries and then go into Pisces, and that'll still be some of your 12th house. But specifically when it's in Aries, it is finding how to satiate the self, how to give yourself what you want so that that chatter in your mind settles, it clears. The what if and the what abouts and the, like just the things that we do to ourselves, like mentally, will start to settle and we'll start to feel more connected with these energies moving through the 12th house for you in general. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you had a wonderful time watching this episode, the first episode of Let's Chat About Your Chart with Brian Dennis. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming and sharing your story with us. I just want to wrap up with a quick insight about spending time with your inner child and giving yourself the things that you want. All of us are born here on this earth, incarnated here on this earth to follow our heart's wants and desires. Okay? We were born with that soul seed that tells us who we are and points the way, guides us to what we want so that we can do the most good in this world, giving yourself the attention, the love, and the care that you need is so imperative, because it's kind of like the whole oxygen mask thing. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first in order to be able to help and give to others. Every relationship that you encounter is actually just a mirror of how you are treating yourself. And the love that you give to yourself is a mirror of the love that you actually are spreading out into the universe. So love your inner child, spend time with them, and don't just spend time criticizing them. Spend time loving on that child. Because the child who you came into this world as is pure. That child represents everything that you are meant to be, everything that you are meant to nurture and care. You are meant to be the parent of your child. And that means parenting and spending time and saying yes. Obviously, a little bit of discipline is necessary, but as the adult, you are there to allow that child to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And that means exploring their wants, exploring their desires, giving yourself support, care, affection, and attention, because you deserve it. Because if you don't know what you want, then how on earth are you supposed to help others? That's the first place that you are supposed to start. How can you take care of yourself? How can you take better care of yourself? How can you feed the innocent soul that came onto this earth? Your wants are not frivolous. Your needs are meant to be met. And if you don't meet them, then who is going to meet them? As RuPaul says, if you don't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen? All right. Signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for this very first episode. If you are interested in following Brian and the progression of his career, you can follow him on Instagram at DoseUnitB. And you can also book him if you'd like. He's an actor and a model. And you can get in touch with him at actorbriandennis@gmail.com. And if you'd like to book a birth chart reading, either on camera or off, email me at fola.walker@gmail.com. All right, now, take very, very good care of yourselves. You deserve it. Bye.